Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another episode of Everything is Personal. And today our guest is Rabbi Alon Ferency. We're living in a time where more and more people are searching for meaning than ever before. Yet many feel more disconnected than ever. My guest today is Rabbi Alon Ferency. He's known as the eclectic cleric. He has unconventional techniques, and his journey challenges the idea that spirituality has to fit inside a single box. He draws from multiple faith traditions and decades of experience helping people navigate life's biggest questions. He believes wisdom isn't about having all the answers. It's about asking better questions. In this episode, we explore faith, purpose, identity, grief, resilience, and how spirituality can help us find peace in an increasingly chaotic world. Whether you're religious, spiritually curious, or simply searching for more meaning, this conversation will leave you thinking long after it's over. Tune in.
So, EndoDNA plus BIOS. You put in the patient's genetic and biological data, and it gives you actual clinical insight. Hormone balance, sleep, inflammation, stress response, all of it. Your patients aren't all the same. Their data shouldn't be either.
Rabbi Alon Ferency. I got that right?
Oh, yeah.
I was trying to practice in my head as I was.
Oh, my God. I feel so bad for people when I work with them. Yeah. No, I hear it all the time. I've heard it all sorts of ways.
So I wanted to ask you a question, because I think people, like, when you have something before your name or something after your name, and it has to do with religion or dogma, like a reverend or something, even professors, I guess, in a way, but especially
doctors too.
Yeah, but especially people don't know how to act around people that are of faith or have some sort of an initial letter, a rabbi or a reverend or a priest or some of that. So I wanted to get your sort of take on, first of all, your journey to becoming a rabbi, which I find fascinating. And do you see the same thing? Is it like, did you have the same sort of different level of respect? Oh, it's a rabbi. I have to sort of keep myself in check and, button up. And did you have that kind of interaction with people who inspired you, rabbis, other rabbis?
I am trying to remember when I was a kid, but I'll start with this story that I learned about years later. So a guy in the Jewish community here in Knoxville invited me to be on a soccer team. I was kind of hunting around to be on a soccer team. And years later, people told me when I started, they all thought something was wrong with him because he cursed all the time on the field. And when I showed up and joined the team, he was like very, very polite and demure. He had like panicked. Whereas I curse on the field. Like I tell people if I'm on the soccer field or in the gym, you're not going to see the serious me. Like you have to accept a level of irreverence, flagrant obscenity, and inappropriate dress. I'll be wearing short shorts and sleeveless shirts. But I myself am not a very formal or stagey kind of person. How did I react to that as a kid? I don't know. When you're 14 and there are rabbis and Jewish professionals and they're the ones helping and coaching you through really difficult moments, it feels very parental. So it probably was as respectful as I would be to any surrogate parent, not necessarily to my own parents, but when an aunt or a teacher or a rabbi fills that role, you look at them in a very parental and paternal way. I don't remember it being deferential in the same way. And certainly rabbis don't have the same deference structure as priests and ministers because Jews aren't expected to be deferential. We've gone through too many pickles to like subvert ourselves to authority, to quote Gary Gulman. We've been in a few pickles.
I'll share my experience. So I was born in Lithuania, like the old Soviet Union.
Oh, wow.
I immigrated here. I lived in Philadelphia. I immigrated when I was about 6 years old, my parents. And we knew Judaism and all that stuff. And my great grandma spoke only Yiddish. She didn't speak Russian, barely. So when we came to the U.S., and the first exposure to a rabbi was an Orthodox rabbi for me. So
usually,
like, hat, the black coat, like everything. And it was an odd experience. until later on, because you're right, it was an authority, but it was also this higher level of authority that I perceived as a kid because I wasn't really familiar with it. And the person didn't look, that wasn't dressed the way another authority figure was. So I had a different kind of relationship with that until I got to know the person better. And I realized, we're all human. It doesn't matter. This is what you do and this is your belief system, but you're still connecting on a human level. That's why I asked that question, because for me, it was sort of a different experience.
I have reached the age of and the power of transcending the need to use the bathroom, of course. So I'm pure in a new way. But what's interesting to me, because I think about Russia, Lithuania, and the Soviet Union and their histories of deference to authority and the kind of continuation of the czar, I wonder how much that's culturally mediated also, because Jews are very undeferential to authority and Americans are as well.
Yeah.
So I don't remember. I mean, again, I probably knew or thought about becoming a rabbi from the time I was 12 or 14. And by then, how seriously did I understand that rabbis are people too, and they do use the bathroom and they do have wives and they do have their own struggles and they're not perfect. I don't know when that came up. And certainly when you go through rabbinical school, you see how the sausage is made and you're not as impressed. And like anything else in life, good and bad, talented people, hacks, people who are moral, people who are a little bit decayed.
It's human nature. But let's go through your origin story, since you started kind of going into that. Where did you grow up?
I totally wanted to make up an origin story like Green Lantern or something.
It's still
I was
time.
in a museum once.
We can edit it out.
I was bitten by a radioactive bat and gained superpowers. No, I grew up. I was born in upstate New York, but grew up south of Boston until I was 22. Lived around there almost exclusively, with a little bit of travel in Israel and Spain, some work in Israel. Went to college that way. Then eventually left on a cross country bike trip. Grew up in a Reform but committed Jewish family with a significant community, of whom my dad's cycling friends were all from the synagogue. Now it's not so true. So those were formative experiences. I used to be a youth group kid. I used to be a camp kid. I was an awkward teen. So the Jewish professionals, especially rabbis, but others as well, were those who supported me through difficult adolescence, early stages of what probably later would have been acknowledged as anxiety or depression. Just being an awkward kid who wanted to get along and wanted to be an extrovert, but didn't have significant social skills.
So I take it your parents were together. Do you have siblings?
I have a younger sister. Yeah, she's an educator and a former cellist.
So as a kid growing up, you mentioned that you may have had this desire to be a rabbi since you were a kid, but were you into, and you mentioned you were awkward and all this, but what were you into? Were you into sports? Were you into math? Were you into comic books, or what were you into?
X-Men comics were up there. The band Rush. The other extreme nerdy triumvirate is Dungeons and Dragons. I always think like Rush, X-Men, Dungeons and Dragons as like really mark you as a certain kind of person. I did play a little football and wrestling. I tried guitar. I've tried piano. I was a theater kid sometimes. In college, I picked up more dance, and I was a jazz DJ. What were my other hobbies? I mean, I go bike riding with my dad, and I mean like longer bike rides, and eventually a cross-country bike trip with some friends. Probably always like to read fantasy and science fiction. Those are the big ones. I think you've caught most of me. I mean, I did have friends. I don't mean to make it like I was sitting under a tree like Ferdinand all day long, but
well, you build a community, I guess, of people that have similar interests at the time. So maybe, being awkward, you're also attracting, awkward Dungeons, Dragons types of kids in your community. Was there like, how did you know that you weren't really fitting into, the other, were there, here's the captain of the football team, here's the cool kids, and I'm not part of that kind of cool kids, but I want to be. Was that something?
I think it's really, as we're talking, I'm realizing I don't have an objective perspective. Right? Like all kids could feel like rejects. Right. I don't know what it's like for a kid who's confident in junior high. I mean, my eldest seems confident, but I think there's a lot going on under the surface, and I don't know how he'll look back on those years. I met one kid in college who claimed he loved junior high, and I wanted to murder him because I feel like that's not fair, and I'm not sure he was telling the truth, and I'm not sure what that even means. And then I look back on that era, and the kid who was the captain of the football team and I used to watch Rush concert videos together. So he was feeling something. I mean, Rush and certain things are attracting people who feel extremely idiosyncratic, odd, quirky, queer, awkward, too smart, different, whatever the word would be. So he felt that too. And he was the most popular kid in school, and we still sort of keep in touch. So I don't know. I don't know what it was all about. And as we're talking, like, how much of it was in my mind, and how much of that?
I think in my perspective, sort of looking at myself and it's all cliquish, right? So when you're in junior high and you're in your high school, if you look around your clique, are you the guys that are, trying to smoke cigarettes and trying to pick up on girls? They're cool. They have their own issues and their own challenges, but that's one clique. And then there's the athletes, and then there's the metalheads, and then there's the nerdy kids. So I guess it depends on.
It was pretty straight up the nerdy kid. I mean, I did graduate at the top of my class and did do AP classes, so I was probably the nerdy kid all along. But my experience as a rabbi, and I think this was really healing for me, is that everyone in the hallway outside my office looked much more confident than they did when they came into my office to talk to me one-on-one. And I've just I believe very strongly that people are all broken and struggling on the inside, and that many of us present this comfortable or confident facade. And sometimes that's necessary, but sometimes it teaches other people mistakenly that everyone is better off than you are. And that's just not true. Yeah. And I've worked also in drug and alcohol rehab, and I see how many kids were broken by the time they were 12 or 14, or had no strong home life, or felt isolated even if they were in a band. And it's not so simple. And I think if you I was trying to think of the words I live by these days in my work. And it's some combination of Plato and Proverbs, which says that everyone is struggling. Only the heart knows its own bitterness is what Proverbs says. And I think it's Plato or a Jewish philosopher said, everyone is under a hard battle, and you should accord them some sort of compassion.
Yeah, it goes to a sense of empathy. I was wondering about your early childhood. Was there your early childhood, how that influenced sort of your experiences and your spiritual outlook in life, and sort of your desire to continue and educate from a spiritual standpoint as well?
I'm struggling with this one recently, thinking about if there, as people who are interested in artists, I always wonder, is talent a real thing, or is it just hard work? And as a spiritual person, I wonder, is it possible to have a uniquely spiritual perspective, or is it just something I've dived into and invested in? And was there a sense? I mean, I was certainly a sensitive kid, but aren't we all sensitive? I was certainly attuned to something sacred in the arts. I was more comfortable in spaces where we were discussing Jewish texts and ritual and religious experience. So that gave me a social confidence. I probably was always connected to being outside and in nature, the things that we think of as typically spiritual, like music and nature and reading. But was I distinctly spiritual? I mean, again, I'm almost 50. I can't remember, but I think what happens with people when they find their calling is there's this germ of a thing, right? Oh, I really enjoy playing piano, so I guess I'll practice. And then I practice because it's helping me address my parents' divorce, and it's giving me a little bit of calm amid a storm. So now I'm practicing an hour a day, and then I get applauded for it at my first recital. So now I'm practicing 2 hours a day, and it keeps going. And so eventually, if a pianist, you could practice 10 to 12 hours a day. So you become incredible. Is it talent, or is it just that there was an inclination there that led you to become more devoted to the practice and study? And so I definitely had an inclination to the spiritual and religious and the arts.
Yeah.
But was I special in that way? I don't know. I don't know what that even means.
Well, maybe I'm going to offer this to you.
Sure. I could use a framework. Yeah.
Maybe it's a combination of both. Maybe there's genetic predispositions that you have. And when you find that connection to your genetic predisposition and reinforce, like, it's coming easier to me because I'm genetically predisposed. Now I'm connecting to this. I'm getting reinforcement that I'm
Yeah.
actually good. It makes me want to do it more. So you're sort of in a parallel path and connecting your predisposition to your epigenetic expression that actually floods everything with neurochemicals and reinforces that and grounds that in the purpose. And now you're connected to your purpose. Like an example would be, I mean, I have musicians, all kinds of different people that I talk to, and they're on the show. Like a person like Slash, when he picked up the guitar at 4 years old or whatever, and he started playing, he's like, "Holy shit, this is it! Like, there's nothing else. School, nothing else matters. I'm sleeping with this thing. I'm playing. Found his purpose in life." Some people don't have that. They don't find their purpose. They try different things. They could be good at that, but it's not fulfilling for them. So maybe they're still good at it, but it doesn't have the same kind of connection to purpose. Maybe it's something like that.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I think the way you're describing it as a path that gets reinforced and sort of a groove in one's life that builds, absolutely. On the other hand, and then there are people like Slash or my friend who's a physician who, from a very young age, know what the thing is, right? And start driving towards it and experience it. I think of a congregant's son who saw a ballet video when he was 6 and just kind of passed out in front of the video, like couldn't turn away. And his mom's like, "I guess we're doing dance, right? Like, I guess that's his thing." And he went out and he danced for the Boston Ballet and then became, I think he's in a management position there later in life. For me, it was a lot of bouncing around and trying different things. And always the core was something around art, culture, spirituality, cross-cultural leadership, engagement in the world, engagement in the spirit. And I'm comforted, or try to be comforted, by the idea that, my friend is better on bass than I am, and Neil Peart is better on drums than I am, and you're a better podcaster than I am, and so on and so forth. But no one's better at being me than I am. And that's what I can really focus on. And there's even a Jewish story to that extent about Zusha of Hanipol, who, when he meets the Holy One in the world to come, they're not going to ask him, "Why couldn't you be more like Moses?" They want to know why he wasn't of himself.
Yeah.
So that's what I work on these days, is just trying to be a good version of me and enjoy the parts of me that and find spaces where I'm using the most of me.
I think that's being vulnerable and understanding. I'm going back to what I said, my initial question, because I'm trying to put it all together in my head as we're talking. So I find it, what you just said is what I always try to tell people, and myself first, over and over and over, like, just be the best version of me, because don't beat up on myself, give myself love, and try to be a better version of me than I was today, tomorrow. Just work on being a better version of me. There's this whole sense of, all this external competition that comes out. So you're seeing people like, people have these cars and people have this and people have that. And LA is full of that.
Yeah.
It's just like a spotlight on that stuff. So it makes it really difficult to try to say, well, I'm being the best version of me, but why can't I be like that person? And this whole notion, as you were saying, of authority, like, you make the vulnerability that you're projecting, at least right now, we're having a conversation. I feel that. I feel for what you're saying. You're not perfect. You have your own struggles and all that stuff. Looking at people who are of faith, as I said before, the reverends and the priests and the rabbis, you don't see that. You see that as that is the authority figure, and they're good. Obviously, we've seen over the years that there's flaws in those human beings as well. But I think it's it connects this barrier between yourself as an authority figure and me, who's, training or studying or trying to be the best version of myself. And that's what I wanted to convey, because I can feel that from you, that there is that sense of vulnerability, and I'm not perfect. We're all on this path to learn, And I'm here just to give you my thoughts and opinions based on information I read and what I feel, but I'm no better than you kind of thing. And that's what I'm feeling from you. And that's why I never got from my quote unquote spiritual leaders.
So, okay, this is a struggle I have. Like, there's something I'm doing that's appealing to people, but I can't figure it out. And I don't know if this is the appropriate place to go into this, or this is just fishing for compliments, but you picked up on a vulnerability, which I think people pick up on. I'm curious how one picks up on that, and then more so why it matters. Because I've seen so many spiritual leaders who are just this beautiful, mellifluous voice. They sound like James Earl Jones on the pulpit. They dress very immaculately. They shake hands, with a very firm handshake. They don't make inappropriate jokes. They don't make fun of themselves, right? Why do you pick that up in me, and why does it matter?
Yeah.
And I'm not challenging you. I've just heard this again and again, and I still don't have the right answer where I understand what I'm doing and why I should be doing it.
I think it has to do with being a natural version of yourself that allows me to mirror my own insecurities in you. So it's relatable. When I see the guy or the woman or anybody who's standing up on stage, dressed up in a certain outfit, I call bullshit on it. And I'll tell you why I call bullshit on it. Because they're still flawed human beings. And because you're dressing up in a certain costume and you're speaking all the right things, whatever you do behind that, when you take all that stuff off, you're just like me. And you're trying to create a distance. And that feels not natural to me. And that disconnects from the connection of a human being, because I want to connect on a human level, and I want to learn because you have knowledge from scripture, from personal experiences, from all these different things, but you also are connected to your version of self. You're not trying to put a mask on. And I think that mask that people put on when they're trying to, even teachers, coaches, you name it, that sense of vulnerability, that creates distance between us. You're an authority figure, there's distance. You're better than me, or whatever that is. And that's why I feel that becomes unrelatable. It maybe works for a lot of people, but the people that are seeking, like I'm a seeker, I'm on a journey of life. I'm seeking. So I can see maybe more clearly than somebody who's not on that journey of personal self-improvement. And people that are kind of can see through the bullshit, I think. That's my knee-jerk response to that.
Don't you have these incredible pastors like Martin Luther King Jr., who were just these incredibly powerful speakers and always in the right place and had their shit together? Yeah, and they're the ones we remember.
I don't feel that at all. I feel that the person is not your vocation. What you do is not who you are. There's a separation of the two. Martin Luther King was flawed himself. He had, adultery issues. There's all kinds of things. If you read into it, it doesn't take away from him being an amazing orator, from making a humongous impact in the world, obviously. And if you can separate the two and know that he's still a human being that has those vulnerabilities, I think that's more inviting to people like myself. And if you wear that on your sleeve and still can come out and show yourself, you can still be great at your vocation, but you can also be vulnerable as a human being, and people I think will connect better to that.
I don't know. I mean, in that particular case, it seemed like people connected to him, even though he, in my vision of him and images I have of him, seemed so not impermeable, but majestic and glorious in a way that seemed almost beyond human.
You can say the same thing about JFK. JFK had the same kind of, or we do. And if you can tap in to that thing that makes you special, Martin Luther King tapped in. He had purpose, he had vision, he connected to the best version of himself, and he was able to bring that out. Timing was everything. He also connected in the right time, and he was
organizational,
all these different things. People look past that. JFK, people look past that. Hey, he had a, he's a human being. Bill Clinton, people look past that too. He's one of the most popular presidents ever. We're okay with that. We're okay that you're flawed as long as you are connected truthfully and genuinely to purpose. You can still be a human being and not, and I think that when people cover up their faults, that's what disconnects at least me from those people.
Don't you think Clinton covered up his faults?
He covered up his faults when he was going through his impeachment, but there's a guy who is I will not name, but he's in LA, and my friend went to the ladies' room in his house, and he's got Monica Lewinsky's dress framed.
Wow, that's slightly less weird than Hitler memorabilia. That is a weird thing to have.
You can only cover up so much.
Wow. Wow. He's got Monica Lewinsky's dress.
Yes. Yeah. So, I don't know.
People are very weird, man.
There's no perfect answer to this. I don't know. I just know sometimes it's a feeling. Sometimes it's a feeling, I'm a big believer in this whole vibrational energy and this frequency thing. So I don't know. You sometimes walk in and you connect with people, you vibrate the same frequency.
Yeah.
There's a connection. And sometimes you don't know why, but it's not aligned. And like, it feels right away. I pick up on that right away, and it feels a misalignment. And then I start, let's remove the artichoke, pieces to get to the heart. And then, I definitely see a mask. So that's my thoughts and opinions on it.
I mean, what's interesting about what you're saying is, and you were asking me sort of my history, like, I feel like I've spent so much of my life trying to get to that, right? To remove not thorns, I don't know what the outer parts of an artichoke are called, the prickles, to kind of, and to be a better listener and to be more attuned. And I think people read it now. I don't understand exactly why that's compelling to people. I guess I just kind of take it on faith that it is. And I love what I do, and I'm okay that it's not for everyone. Pete Holmes, his last special was, I'm not for everybody, and I love that idea. Like, it's very liberating to think there are going to be people who connect with me, people who want to work with me, people who want to be a friend, loved one, and people who don't. And that's sort of the nature of the thing. And I think if we go back to the high school experience and cliques, I thought, well, what really matters is quantity, right? And my mother would kind of hint, like, well, what if you just had two really good friends? Wouldn't that be enough? And I'm, no, you got to have everyone. And that's so unrealistic, unhealthy, and self-destructive in a way. If you're constantly grasping and having these quantities of people surround you, you're going to ultimately be, in fact, alone. So I had to learn that.
You're also going through this insecurity of, I'll say me, this insecurity of people pleasing too. So I'm an only child. My friends were my brothers. This was it. I will trade everybody in the world for my friends. This is all I have, and this is everything. And as you get older, you start to realize, well, number one, somebody gets a girlfriend. That's more important in their life. The girlfriend doesn't like you. Now you're no longer hanging out. Oh, no, man, I can't go out tonight. I have other plans. Okay. So and then sometimes your friends disappoint you. They end up screwing you over in business or something else, which happened to me. And you come to a realization that exactly what your mom said, my parents told me as well, it is all about quality, but you have to get to the point where you are real. And when you are real to yourself, and you're still work in progress, but at least you're able to recognize in yourself and not putting on the facade to people please. And at that point, you're starting to attract the real ones. And it's okay to shed people in your life too, because if you're working on yourself and you're changing and you're evolving, some of those people may go by the wayside as well.
So what's the process in your life? Like, what has helped you to kind of clarify, purify, and distill and get to the heart of the matter in your own experience? And I know that's a big question, a big process, but were there particular psychotherapies, meditation
It's
practices.
funny. I was going to ask you the same thing, so I'll answer that, and you can answer that
Okay. Okay.
question
Yeah.
back. So we'll do it back and forth. Uh,
Sure.
you know, I talk to people about my own journey. I came from a very abusive household, physically, mentally abusive. I was diagnosed with attention deficit disorder. I put on medication, discovered cannabis was my medication for me. That really worked. Got rid of everything. My parents didn't like it too much. So they ended up kicking me out of the house, actually calling the cops to have me arrested. And, you, I didn't speak to my parents. I have a great relationship with them now. I speak to my father like every day. So there was a lot of moments throughout my life. Like I said, I'm a seeker. So I would read these books that people would make fun of. I read spiritual books. I read, Hindu. It doesn't matter what it is. I actually started reading this book that called The Psychology of Winning by Dennis Waitley when I was a kid. And they're like, what are you reading? I'm like, I don't know, but I like it, personal development stuff. And then I pursued this whole, path of personal development. So, but I did have psychotherapy, and I'll tell you my breakthrough moment. So, uh, Les was my therapist. I had many, but this was one of the best ones. I had two or three really good ones in my life. Les was great. He was an older Jewish gentleman. He perceived me like as a son. He would come in and kiss me on the forehead, and it was really not a typical therapy session, but we got to be close. And he said, "Would you be willing to bring your parents in?" I said, "They don't believe in psychotherapy, but I'll ask them." I came over and they're like, for you, we'll do it. Fine. Okay, great. So I told this story before, so if somebody heard it, like, you can fast forward or whatever. But I'll give you a visual. So I'm sitting where I'm sitting. Les is sitting on my right. My father's sitting across from Les on a couch. My mom's sitting next to him. And my dad really doesn't like therapy. He thinks it's a joke. So he's being sort of I I don't know, not very respectful, just answering questions. Yeah, yeah, whatever, whatever. And then he goes, "You don't want to know about Len? Let me tell you about Len." And I did not remember this at all. So we lived in Lithuania. We lived in this building, and there was a little street. I was maybe three, maybe four, and there was a little street behind us, and there was a store. And so I went with my mom to the store. I don't remember what the store was, but I wanted her to buy me something. She wouldn't buy it. There was people. I had a fit. And at some point, I walked out of the store, walked across a little street, went to my neighbor's house who used to watch me when my parents were at work. My mom was like, "Where is he?" And the person said, "He just walked out. I saw him." So she knew where I went, I think. She went to my neighbors, got me, and she said, "Oh, wait till your father gets home," that kind of thing. So my dad is telling the story and said, when I got home, it was time for Len's punishment. And I don't remember if it was a belt or a hand. I think it was a belt. Usually when I was a kid, it was a belt. So I would get beat with a belt. And my dad goes, I was hitting him and he wouldn't cry. So I would hit him harder and he wouldn't cry. And I kept hitting him and he just wouldn't cry. So that's the kind of man that Len is. He's strong. He doesn't even cry. And at that point, a tear came down and I was like, you, whatever, whatever. I was like, you're never going to, you try to beat my emotion, my sense of connecting to my emotional self out of me. And you probably succeeded a long time in my life because I had this suppressed. And that's the moment that I made a decision. I'm never going to give you that power over me again. We've had many conversations. My dad apologized and said, there was no book written. And it totally, totally, I mean, there were books, but whatever. It totally reconnected us, and we rebuilt this relationship. And I gave up that feeling of anger because, he didn't feel it. I felt it. So I gave that up, and we have a whole new connection. So that's sort of my initial story with my dad. And I proceeded to do all kinds of stuff. I did from Tony Robbins. I did a Joe Dispenza retreat this weekend. I'm always, always trying to see what I can do to better myself. So that's my story.
I mean, it's a really sad story too. And then it just, what I hear is, and I struggle with this with my own kids, it's like this, sometimes we just want compliance, and I'm hearing it from my sister about one of her kids' teachers. And forced compliance is what your dad is sort of seeking in that story. And it's so corrosive to self, and you talk about it as a kind of repression of emotion, but it's like you lose sense of self because you're just trying to fit in. And then I feel like my work with a lot of people now is getting them to deprogram all of that forced compliance, right? And the shame and the guilt and the bad beliefs and the lies that we carry because we were made to comply. And it sucks. And then as a parent, like I'm really struggling as a parent. Like I'm not particularly good at it.
You may not know that because the what you put in. So my dad actually said he's very proud of the kind of father I am. He got so mad at me because I said, well, I just try to do the opposite of what you were going to do with me. He was so pissed. He was not happy with that. But it's not easy. I have a wonderful daughter. I have one daughter. She's in school in Berkeley. I have a wonderful relationship with her, but I try to be open and honest as much as possible. We have our struggles still, and I think it's this notion of being it's okay to be vulnerable with your kids. It's okay to know when you're wrong. I'm not a big punish guy. I didn't like it. So what I would do, I still have a temper. I yell sometimes here and there. So it's still a work in progress. But this is the thing that I did that I think really helped. And I asked her if this has really helped her. When we would get an argument, when she did something wrong, I would give it like some time and I would have a conversation, sit down with her. Let's go through and understand why. And I wanted to, and she was so annoyed. I want to talk. And I just kept pushing and pushing. And that conversation, just sitting and discussing why and why did you do that? And why did you, and this is how it made me feel. I think that's what I did correctly if I did anything right. But those conversations that were really difficult to have, not treating her as a kid, but trying to treat her not exactly as an equal, but with respect that I would expect back. I think that really helped a lot.
I think to do that well, you have to be able to pause, right? Like, and not be in the fire of it. Sometimes I can do that and sometimes I cannot.
Exactly. But even if you're in the fire of it, at least come back and apologize. She was freaking out flying and it was a bad weather and she was having a panic attack. And I was like, the fuck, just go. You do this every couple months. It's a 45-minute flight. So I was just, I'm leaving. And I did that. And I called her next day. I said, her name is Sasha. I said, I'm so sorry. I reacted and it's not right for me to react. No matter what I said after the fact, it didn't matter because I reacted. I need to take that pause, and Kabbalah, they taught me you have to take this pause and, the proactive formula and all that stuff. I didn't do that because my emotions took over. But because I went and apologized and I said to her, I'm sorry, I'm going to work. I'm going to try to be better. And then that reconnected me. But yeah, we make mistakes. It's okay. Just admit them.
The best apology I have ever received, someone made an anti-Semitic joke that he thought one of those, I heard a Jew make it, so I thought I could say the joke, but he didn't get it. And when I pointed it out to him, he very quickly said, I'm sorry, that's not the person I want to be.
Wow.
I was like, I just like my default apology because it was such a powerful way to own it and to acknowledge your humanity, but also like, I would like to grow past this. Can you give me the grace to do that? The thing you mentioned also, I didn't think about in my own personal growth because I would have said therapy and prayer and meditation but reading, yeah, there was a lot of books in there. I forgot how many books that influenced, whether it's a fiction or nonfiction, influenced my sort of personal, emotional, psychological, spiritual development. Yeah. And to me, arts as well. And I wouldn't have so clearly, I think about those as very spiritual experiences, but when we think about self-help or self-growth or self-awareness, those are big ones too.
Absolutely. And for me as well. And people talk about mentors. You have to have mentors.
Yep.
But sometimes you don't know that they're your mentors because I have authors that I follow and I read their stuff. They don't know that they're my mentor. Like I read Robert Greene's books. I love Malcolm Gladwell. I love a lot of these things, and they would never know that. Well, maybe if they listen to this, they would. But they've been mentors in my life because the things they put out connect with me at some level. So, like I said, if you're a seeker, if you have your beacon out there, you're always attracted to things, and it's a culmination of all those things, not just one, and like a work in progress. But you mentioned prayer, so I've always had this thing with prayer, meditation, form of prayer. When I took Kabbalah, that to me was all right. Now it's meditation, it's prayer, but this whole thing of religion, right? So we're in an ever evolving world with AI and everything else. How do you see religion evolving and staying relevant in this rapidly changing world, and in this fine line between religion and spirituality?
It's a really hard question. That's a hard question. Because I was a pulpit rabbi for a dozen years and I loved it. But for me, it was no longer serving a spiritual need. And I'm sure that is true for other people. And so the existing institutions and the idea of institution, I think more and more is a problem, is inimical to spiritual experience. Because even if you have a new and innovative institution, eventually it just becomes an institution, right? That has its own desire to preserve itself, that has its own internal logic and rules, and is less flexible, nimble, and innovative. And I don't know. I think I can only take my own experience, and I'm really struggling with it because I think I'm still Jewish. I'm some kind of Jewish that isn't typical. My experience is largely mystic, but also informed by the arts and even some other faith traditions. I don't think that makes me a Unitarian. I don't think it doesn't make me a Jew, but it makes me a very eccentric kind of religious figure, or in an eccentric or unusual religious space. I've talked to a few people who have this experience, but we don't have a name for it. I don't want to found an institution, maybe a school. I don't think I want to start another synagogue or congregation. I don't think I want to start a nonprofit. I like having students and teachers. I like having cohorts of people with whom I go on retreat or study or interact with, create art with. I love mentoring people and the learning I get from teaching people. I still read and trying to write more. But as far as the future of religion, I don't know, those all feel sort of like fragmentary, right? And I think religion, by its nature, whether it's a very big and centralized religion like Roman Catholic experience, or a very diffuse and idiosyncratic experience like conservative Judaism or Southern Baptist experience, where every church and every synagogue is kind of doing its own thing within a sort of bandwidth. I still think what I'm talking about is just like find your own religion almost. And my dad's cantor, my dad told me this when I saw him a month ago. He said his dad's cantor said everyone's really living their own religion. And I don't know what that means in terms of the future of religion and spirituality. That's not prescriptive. I guess I'm more descriptive than prescriptive. Like, for some people, I know it's been psychedelics. For some people, it's silent retreat. For me, a lot, like this past year, reading James Baldwin has been extremely rich. Teaching people, listening to music. I meditate and walk. I walk a lot, and walk without a podcast, walk without music, ideally even without the dog, and just have that space to be. I do less and less, to a point where I'm wondering if I need to be a little more productive and a little less meditating. I wonder if you can meditate too much and just kind of hang out too much pleasantly. I'm learning a lot from being a parent. I'm learning a lot from starting this private practice as a coach and personal sort of bespoke rabbi to people. So I feel like I'm growing spiritually more at this point than almost any other point in my life. Maybe the 2 years I was in the Peace Corps, maybe certain parts of rabbinical school, or the very early parts of my pulpit. But it doesn't have a name, and it doesn't have a structure, and it doesn't have a denomination. I don't know what to do with that. And I don't want a dogma, and I don't want an institution.
I think what you just said is extremely impactful, and there's a huge there's a huge amount of people that are searching for that. And because of what you said, this whole notion of dogma, I'll give you an example. So I worked with a bunch of South African Jews, Orthodox, and when my daughter went to a Reform school, Jewish school, and our temple was connected there. We had two female rabbis. One of them was getting married to another female, and well, I'm telling the guys there, and I found the rabbi that was speaking. I thought she was like really good. She could take scripture, whatever, and I could connect to what she was saying. It just was interesting to me. I could listen, and they're like, not a rabbi, can't be a rabbi. It's a woman, and wait, a lesbian. So I was like, well, wait a second. Why are you why are you judging? And that's the word that I really wanted to use. This whole notion of dogma judgment. You're a better Catholic or I'm a better Catholic than you. I'm a better Jew. No, and I think what you just said, this notion of compassion and non-denominational and this we're all on this journey. It doesn't matter who you are. You're going to come from the teachings that you already know and what's comfortable for you, but you're open to other things. I had this class in when I was going to college called Intellectual Heritage, and we read like the Quran, we read the Old Testament, the New Testament, the Book of Job, Marx, everything, and I was just like, well, this is interesting. This is interesting. That's cool.
Yeah.
Why is it just this? This is all interesting. There are common threads to most of them, but why not just use all that to guide people to be the best version of themselves with compassion? And I think that's what's missing. That's one of your areas of secret sauce.
Okay. I mean, I think it's also what you're describing in that class that sounds really appealing to me is like there's a lot of truths out there, and some of them seem contradictory, but you try to like integrate them. Right. Marx and Adam Smith, the free market capitalist guy. Like exactly. They're both true in some circumstances and in some ways. And then I think back to the beginning of our conversation, these people, these South Africans that you mentioned, I bet they would love a rabbi who sounded really fancy. Yeah. And so I think that's what I struggle with. I'm like, no, there are people who really want this fancy, looks good in a suit, gives the straightforward and simple answers, singular truth, even if it's not exactly true. We see that in political systems. We see that in religious systems. A lot of people don't want the middle, which is gray and paradoxical. They want discrete, clear answers. So when you talk about, well, vulnerability is attractive or compassion or non-dogmatic, there's a lot of people out there who don't want that. Let's also say that. There's a lot of people who want really strong, univocal, unequivocal, direct, concrete answers, and I can't serve them.
Great, then don't. And you don't have to. There's my mom always used to tell me, no matter, there's always somebody for everybody, kind of thing.
Yeah.
When you're trying to, oh, this person is fat or this person is this, there's always somebody for everybody. They're not for you. There's a
lid for every pot was the Yiddish version. I think there's a lid for every pot. Yeah.
That's not the members of your tribe. We are all in different tribes. We have our human tribe. Even within Judaism, we have different, tribes, obviously, in denominations. Just not your tribe, and it's cool. And so, some things connect, some things don't.
If I can be vulnerable about it, I think that's one of the hard things of the life I'm living now is I don't have a clear tribe, and it's lonely. Right? Like if you're a member of a synagogue that's in a denomination, there were 300 people and they would show up for services, some of them less often than others, but there was this obvious circle of people who were connected to me. And if I'm promoting this idea that is sort of paradoxical, that is deeply embedded in culture, but also spirituality, and a sense of multiple truths that you can get from Marx and from Coltrane and James Baldwin and the Book of Jonah and the Book of Job and some of Jesus's teaching and bits of the Quran and Sufi mystics. And like, who walks in that space and who's going to sit down together? And but it's not like
that's a lot. I think if I may be so open, to say that I think it's your limiting belief.
Okay.
Once if you remove that limiting belief and get out of there, I'll tell you another
Well,
quick
what's
story.
the name, the limiting belief, just so I can hear it out loud? Like,
The limiting belief is that you don't have a tribe to attract based on all those things that you just said. Like there is no big tribe. And I believe that there is a tribe that can connect to everything that you said, that wants the unique aspects that you bring from all those different things. I will be a member of that tribe. That connects to me. So
okay.
believing that
Okay.
there is
I will sign you up for my cult then. That'll be great.
I'm in.
Sign you up for the cult. I'll tell you the uniform later. I'll send you the uniform.
Yeah, that's we need to have all matching T-shirts. But I'll tell
Yeah.
you a quick story. So I went through a divorce. Divorce was, man, that was one of the worst things and best things that ever happened to me.
That's what I hear. Yeah.
But it was an extremely difficult situation. And what I was looking for a men's group, and I couldn't find anything. So, and I was helping my buddy go through his divorce, and he's like, "Why don't you just do a group?" I'm like, who the fuck is going to listen to me? Who am I? He's like, I don't know. Look, I did a meetup, men's group. 6 people came. I studied how to run a group. I did everything. Like, you have 2 minutes, no stop. Next person. I did all that, and it was okay. I mean, that's not the way to run a group, but I studied, and I started getting notes from women who were saying, "Hey, is this only for men?" I was like, you know what? I'd love to have a woman's perspective. So long story, a little bit longer. I did it for 4 years. It was the greatest therapy that I ever received. Like 800 members. We would meet once or twice a week in my house, only 15 at a time. That's all I could fit. But that created the tribe, and the people were telling other people, and that happened. So me not having any experience, not doing anything, all I did was I facilitated. I allowed people to tell their stories. I allowed other people to comment. I learned, and that was my therapy. So if you build it, they'll come.
Yeah. I got to figure that one out. That was sort of the organizational of it, and where and how. But that's where I am this year. I'm in the 3rd year of this private practice, and that's, I think, a goal has always been like, okay, so where's the community in this? And even do I want that? Because that's a lift. That there's work in building a community that when I coach people one-on-one or like have small groups teaching, that's more self-evident how to do it, right? I don't have to learn new skills or hire people or make posters.
Yeah,
But
well, maybe it's the one-on-one, and maybe it's a small group, and maybe you train the trainers and get other people to recruit for you, and you scale that way too.
yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Let's see what we can do to collaborate.
I would love to. Yeah, let's follow up. Let's follow up. This has been a really nice time to connect.
I know we're up against it, but I have a few questions I ask on my guests, if you don't mind.
Sure.
They're all music related questions.
Okay.
So, do you remember, and if so, the very first concert that you attended?
I 100% do, because I did a podcast like 4 days ago about the album that the concert was in support of. Yes, it was Rush's Presto. It would have been, I would guess, 89 at the Worcester Centrum in Massachusetts. I had the worst seats in the house for the first 2 songs, which were Force 10 and Free Will. 2 guys brought up, I am guessing she was a prostitute, and had sex with her on the seats next to me. It was a very shocking.
Well,
and
you had the best seats in the house. You said the worst seats. They turned out to be the best seats.
I don't know. I'm thinking of 14-year-old's brain. It was a little too mind-blowing. Yes, I remember that. The rest of the concert was amazing musically. Yes, but I remember.
Well, that's memorable. Okay, so
in a lot of ways.
Well, what was the last concert you attended?
Oh, shoot. I wish it were more recent. That's kind of sad. There's a festival here in Knoxville called Big Ears, which I highly, highly recommend. And it's coming up in 2 weeks. And I hope that not Big Ears wasn't the last concert I was at last year, because I must have something over the summer. I'm a little worried I haven't seen a concert since the last Big Ears, which is a terrible thing to say. I'm not sure I've been to a concert in the past year. That's horrible.
That's a year's not.
But they're coming up. I mean, I do have 4 little kids and a dog and 2 cats, and starting my own professional life in a way. So yeah, I'll let you know if I think of anything else, but everyone should come to Big Ears in Knoxville, Tennessee. It's truly, truly an amazing musical and artistic experience.
Okay, so another music question. For the next year, you can only listen to 5 albums. You don't have
Oh,
to
that's easy.
remember. You don't have to remember the name of the album. It can be a Rush, whatever. What would be those 5 albums?
I still love the new album by Khruangbin. The album I talked to someone about on a podcast Friday was Rush's Presto. I always come back to A Love Supreme by John Coltrane. I love the new Doechii album, but I don't know if it would hold up for an entire year, although it's pretty great mixtape. I got into listening to the Daft Punk live album recently, but not for a whole year. Nick Drake's A Love Supreme, kind of heading back to Hendrix again, maybe. I'm looking around your collection, trying to think if it cues up anything.
I have some Zeppelin, Metallica.
I'm metallic, like, yeah. Ride the Lightning, maybe. I don't know. I don't like everything on Ride the Lightning. That's a good question. I'm close to those 5, but I can't commit.
Okay.
Say Pink Moon, Presto, Doechii's album, Alla Sala by Khruangbin, I think, and A Love Supreme. But that's I can only say that as of today.
Yeah. Well, that's what it is. When people ask me, I'm like, it's just it's not even us today. It's right now, an hour
at this minute. Yeah,
it'll be different. Okay. Final question. Please describe what your room looked like growing up.
Oh, cool. I did love my room growing up, and I had a different bed at various points. Like at one point I had it full, and at one point I'll go when I had I had an L-shaped bunk bed, but I never slept in the top bunk. But under the L-shaped bed, I had like my first TV that I bought with paper route money and a Sega Genesis or whatever system was a little before that. And posters, I had car posters, which I'm not a car guy now. Like I had never learned how to fix a car, but I love certain cars. Like it was a 60s Jaguar and a recent Lamborghini. I had lots of clippings of the band Rush. I probably had other posters, like maybe a Pink Floyd poster. I had a really good stereo system very young. So I saved up money for my bar mitzvah to buy a good stereo system and a TV. There was a hole in the wall behind my door when I slammed the door once. My parents never found out about the hole. The guy taped over carefully. I told them about it years later. That was a great room. It had polka dot wallpaper. Did I say that already?
No.
I'm trying to remember what else was really special in that room. Probably a certain amount of art stuff that I would have collected. Maybe I collected art stuff later. Yeah, it was a great room. It was a great room growing up and really a safe space. Yeah.
Cool. So, Alon, where can people reach out to you? Where can they find you? Where can they engage? And where can they join your cult?
Yeah, the cult, you have to wear purple. I learned that from the show Yellow Jackets. I saw a cult in the show Yellow Jackets. So I was like, I want my cult to have that color clothes. Eclectic Cleric, oneword.com. You can also find me at Eclectic Cleric on most socials, including recently Substack. You can find me on podcasts, Insight Timer. I have Instagram and Facebook and all the standard socials at Eclectic Cleric. But the best thing is the website, www.eclecticcleric.com or rabbi@eclecticcleric for email.
And for my audience, thank you again for
staying
with us. Please, it really helps me. And my team told me to ask, like and subscribe, even though I hate asking for these things, but like and subscribe. It helps me to be found in the algorithms. Thank you so much for buying my book, Making Cannabis Personal, on Amazon. I was told that I do a really good description of the endocannabinoid system where people can relate to. So
you've talked to me about it. Yeah. You have a lot of knowledge in that area.
And then what else? Oh, and thank you so much for all the reviews too. Even though not everything is 5-star, almost all of them are. I learned from the 4 stars as well. So thank you for leaving that also. So Lon, thank you so much for being on.
Thank you so much, Len.
Hey everyone, thank you for watching and listening. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button, share this episode, and hit that bell. Like, comment, I so appreciate that. And check me out on social under Len May or Len May DNA. Find out more on LinkedIn or lenmaycoaching.com. And remember, everything is personal.